Today we're going to talk about the serve, and one of the most feared serves in the men's game is of course Milos Raonic. So Matt, talk us through why Milos Raonic has such a great serve.
Because he's able to hit all four corners in the service boxes. He's got a really good wide first serve because he can put slice spin on it. Obviously he can hit it very hard as well, so he can hit a flat serve. And he's got a brilliant kick serve, and sometimes he uses that off of the first serve. So the tricky thing about him is that he sometimes goes for aces, and sometimes he sets up the point because he has such a big forehand. So I think it's difficult to return against him because you don't really know what's going to come.
And is the key to the serve the fact that it's coming off exactly the same toss every time?
That's what it seems like. I mean, we hear stories about Roger Federer that he sort of throws the ball in all kinds of different places, whereas Pete Sampras, of course, he learned how to serve with his coach behind him. And after the toss was in the air, then they called out the serve. So Milos Raonic, I think, is more like a Pete Sampras. So when the toss is in the same place, it's more consistent, and also it's very difficult to read where he's serving. But I think the variation of his serve is underrated. He really mixes it up.
Yeah, and of course it does help the fact that he's very tall.
Does help. Tall players usually have better serves. But I think the other important thing with Milos Raonic, because it's so consistent, because his movement with his feet is very simple, very similar to Pete Sampras, where Pete Sampras didn't actually move. He sort of stood in the same place and then he jumped in. And Milos Raonic does the same thing. You tend to get a little more power when you step up with your right foot behind, but Milos Raonic doesn't need the power because he's so strong and he serves so hard anyway. So I think the toss combination with his feet not moving too much makes it a very consistent serve.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about the way that he sets up for the serve is, of course, a lot of people start with their racket and ball hand together, but of course he has a very open racket face, doesn't he, which is unusual, and yet Sam Stosur does the same thing and has an equally good kick serve.
Yes, I think, I'm not really sure why, but I think it helps you here. You open up the racket face straight away and you don't get caught in here. And a lot of players today, they get caught in here where the right arm comes up later, but Raonic, both arms go up at the same time. So again, the timing is exceptionally good.
Yeah, so talk us through in terms of the perfect technique on a serve. Obviously there are so many different ways to serve, but how were you taught to serve? And of course the footwork along that baseline, and in terms of the left arm on the throwing, some people say actually follow the line of the baseline. How were you taught to serve?
I was taught to serve very, very simple. Basically your hand comes nearly to your left thigh and then it goes straight up. And I was taught to bring both arms up at the same time. And today we see a lot of players, they bring up the toss arm and then they delay the right arm. And then eventually that comes up for a little bit more power. But I think you lose a bit of timing. But I think the biggest difference between serves is the footwork. And I think the more consistent servers like Andy Roddick, Roger Federer, of course, Milos Raonic now, they don't move their feet very much. They stand in the same place. I think you lose some power. But obviously for Roddick, that wasn't a big deal, and for Milos Raonic, it's not a big deal. So if you're going to teach somebody how to serve, I think the quieter your feet are, the better, the more consistent your serve will be.
Yeah, and obviously the shoulders are very key in serving. What is the perfect shoulder position?
Well, it's better to be more turned than not enough turned. We see a lot of amateurs come out and they serve like this, and if you serve like this, you don't get any help from your hips. And a lot of your power comes from your hips. So you want to try and turn over here, and now you get that corkscrew effect. So you wind yourself up. And a lot of amateurs just serve with their arm, and that's why they don't get any power.
Yeah, and what about the position of the racket behind the head? It's obviously like a dropping motion, isn't it? And the elbow position behind the head there. What about that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's another very, very difficult thing for people that don't play tennis all the time and maybe haven't learned how to serve when they were kids, is you got to get it down, you got to get your arm down here, and then literally it's like throwing motion. You throw your racket at the ball. Whereas a lot of amateurs, again, they don't have that in them, so it's very stiff.
Too much arm.
Yeah, we know that Novak Djokovic was struggling for a long time where his racket was very far down, and now he's much higher up. And again, if you remember Andy Roddick, he used to start up here and maybe
the abbreviated swing.
Yeah, and maybe the best serve of all time, Andy Roddick. And Milos Raonic, again, has a very consistent serve because it's very simple.
And just talk us through, because I know a lot of people out there who'd be interested in a serving lesson, the difference between the flat, hard serve and the kicker in terms of what you do with the racket face on the ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, the flat serve, you can't hit up on the ball. obviously. You hit a flat serve, you got to get up as high as you can, and then you hit down on the ball. Whereas when the kick serve, you literally are hitting the ball up, and the spin will make the ball come in. And I think that's another thing that the pros are so good at, especially on the men's side. The kick serve it's underrated in many ways, because a lot of amateurs, they don't have a kick serve, and we see a lot of the women don't have a kick serve because you need the strength. Samantha Stosur, you mentioned, she has a great kick serve. Serena Williams has a good kick serve, but they have in common is that they're really, really strong in their upper body. So, but you do hit up on the ball on the second serve most of the time.
Yeah. Finally, the knee bend. Using the legs in the serve important?
Yes, very much. I think that Boris Becker was most probably the first man to come out where he literally was down. I couldn't even do it because I can't come back up. But he was literally down here, and we see Federer is also very deep, and I think that's to generate some power. Yeah, the launch pad, exactly. And when you don't move your right foot up behind the left foot, it's very important to come down in your knees if you're able to get up, of course. But Roger Federer, I think, has the deepest knee bend these days.
Okay, you're going to serve one down?
Well,
finish up?
I don't know if I can even hit.
Try and avoid the camera. Oh, perfect.
That's 60 miles an hour.
Perfect. Okay, well that's the serve, and let's see how many aces Raonic serves by the end of the championships.